Good evening, visitors, and welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Jared Pratt, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Major Catherine Best. As part of the memorial's commemorations to mark the 80th anniversary of the end of the Second World War, today we remember and commemorate the 80th anniversary of victory in the Pacific Day. On the afternoon of the 15th of August 1945, Japan's Emperor Hirohito announced his nation's acceptance of the Allies' terms of surrender. It was more than 3.5 years since Japanese troops had invaded Malaya and bombed Pearl Harbor. News of Japan's surrender produced spontaneous celebrations in Australia, the United States, and war-ravaged Asia and Europe. The Second World War was over. Japan's formal surrender took place on the 2nd of September when their delegation signed the documents of surrender aboard USS Missouri in Tokyo Bay, marking the official end of the Second World War. Today, we pay our respects to the almost 40,000 Australian men and women who died as a result of their service during the Second World War, and who are commemorated here on the Roll of Honour, and to the survivors who returned home. This evening, we're honoured to acknowledge Her Excellency, the Honourable Ms Sam Mostyn, Governor-General of the Commonwealth of Australia, the Honourable Matt Keogh, Minister for Veterans Affairs and Minister for Defence Personnel, representing the Prime Minister of Australia, our members of the Diplomatic Corps, the Honourable Angus Taylor, Shadow Minister for Defence, representing the Leader of the Federal Opposition, Air Marshal Robert Chipman, representing the Chief of the Defence Force, Ms Alison Frame, Secretary of the Department of Veterans Affairs, Ms Alison McLaurin, Deputy Secretary of the Department of Veterans Affairs, Mr Khalil Fagan, Repatriation Commissioner, Ms Sharon Bown, representing the Chair of the Council of the Australian War Memorial, and Mr Matt Anderson, Director of the Australian War Memorial. We're especially honoured to welcome the delegation of Second World War veterans who have joined us this evening for this special last post ceremony. We're delighted to welcome you to the Australian War Memorial, and we thank you for your service. We warmly welcome Mr Patrick Delgaitis, Deputy President of the Returned and Services League of Australia, ACT branch, Mr Alex McGowan, representing the Naval Association of Australia, Flight Lieutenant Richard Caesar Thwaites, retired, representing the Air Force Association, and representatives of the 1st Recruit Training Unit from the Royal Australian Air Force Base, Wagga Wagga, New South Wales. And as always, we welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Returned and Services League of Australia and the RSL and Services Clubs Association. We welcome members who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by invited guests, visitors to the memorial, students on behalf of the Australian Islamic College of Sydney, and cadets representing 417 City of Bayside Squadron, Sandringham in Victoria. Australia's Federation Guard is the tri-service ceremonial unit of the Australian Defence Force. They provide a ceremonial presence at civil and military events and during visits to Australia by foreign dignitaries. The Guard will now dismount the catafalque party from the tomb of the unknown Australian soldier. I now invite the Honourable Matt Keogh, Minister for Veterans Affairs and Minister for Defence Personnel, representing the Prime Minister, to the lectern.
Good afternoon. I acknowledge the traditional owners on the land on which we have gathered here today, the Governor-General and all of our distinguished guests, and especially our Second World War veterans. Today, on the 80th anniversary of victory in the Pacific and the end of the Second World War, I particularly acknowledge the 12 Second World War veterans who have joined us here today from all over Australia and who we are very privileged to have joining us here. Thank you for being here and for your service that you have rendered in Australia's name. On 15 August 1945, streets across Australia erupted with emotion as radios crackled with the news of Japan's surrender. The Second World War was over, ending a bloody 6-year war that touched all corners of the globe, the most devastating global conflict in human history. Amid the cheering and euphoria, though, was a quiet grief. A grief felt in homes who had received telegrams delivering the worst possible news, and in the hearts of those awaiting news of loved ones who would never return. We had won peace, but at a terrible cost. From a nation of around 7 million, almost 1 million of those served in our armed forces and merchant navy in the Second World War, some 40,000 did not return home. The impacts of war were profound. Almost every Australian family was touched by the experience, including my own, with the lives of relatives never known, 2 of my grandfather's brothers, cut all too short. It changed Australia and left an enduring legacy. All those who served, both abroad and on the home front, showed incredible strength and determination across multiple theatres of war. But as a nation under attack for the first time, the best of the Australian, indeed the Anzac spirit, shone through, with mates pulling together to help mates. This special commemorative year, I again acknowledge all those proud veterans who join us to commemorate this anniversary, and the many more attending services around the country, many who have reached their own century. As a nation, we say thank you. They were the greatest generation who answered the call to serve, ensuring Australia is the vibrant, democratic and free country that it is today. Australia's contribution to the Allied victories in Europe and the Asia-Pacific cemented our place on the world stage, playing a pivotal role in the formation of the United Nations and forging significant new alliances that continue to be important to this day. Australia became less isolated. Indeed, it was during the Second World War that Australia stood on its own 2 feet independently for the first time. With the war's end, our nation opened its doors wide to those from across the seas, contributing to our glorious, diverse community. To all those who have served, and to all those who were lost, and to all those who love them, your service and sacrifice will never be forgotten. Your legacy endures, lest we forget.
Thank you, Minister. If you're able, please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. Please be seated. Please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through until the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection in the following order. Representing the Second World War veterans in attendance, Miss Joyce Damon, Mr Reginald Swanborough, Mr Gerald Buttrose, Mr Theodore Darlington and Mr John McDonald. Please place your wreath. Her Excellency, the Honourable Miss Sam Mostyn, Governor-General of the Commonwealth of Australia. The Honourable Matt Keogh, Minister for Veterans Affairs and Minister for Defence Personnel, representing the Prime Minister of Australia, who is laying a wreath this evening on behalf of all Second World War veterans. Members of the Diplomatic Corps, please take up your wreaths. I invite you now to all step forward and place your wreaths on the edge of the pool of reflection. This gesture symbolises a unified desire for peace and the respect shared by all nations for the memory of those lost during the Second World War. Please step back. The Honourable Angus Taylor, Shadow Minister for Defence, representing the Leader of the Federal Opposition. Air Marshal Robert Chipman, representing the Chief of the Defence Force. Ms Alison Frame, Secretary of the Department of Veterans Affairs. Ms Sharon Bown, representing the Chair of the Council of the Australian War Memorial, and Mr Matt Anderson, Director of the Australian War Memorial. Final wreaths will be laid by visitors to the memorial.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Warrant Officer Class 2, Frederick Balfe Emanuel. Frederick was born on the 19th of August 1918, the only child born to Robert and Beryl Emanuel of Coolum, New South Wales. His father was a secondary school teacher. The family moved to Wellington, New South Wales, where Frederick graduated from high school in 1935. Eventually, the family moved to Sydney, where Frederick married Molly Hancock in 1939. He worked in a bank and was involved with the local Freemasons and a militia unit. In August 1941, Frederick left his job and enlisted with the 2nd Australian Imperial Force in Sydney, just before his 23rd birthday. Private Emanuel joined the 1st Armoured Training Regiment for 2 months of basic training. Private Emanuel spent the next 12 months training with the 2nd 7th, then the 2nd 6th Armoured Regiments near Newcastle. He was promoted several times, including to acting Staff Sergeant, so that his regiment could employ him as a clerk. In late October 1942, Frederick and the 2nd 6th Armoured Regiment sailed from Sydney to Port Moresby. It was the first Australian Armoured Regiment to be moved to Papua. There, it conducted jungle training exercises. Men from the regiment also worked as stretcher bearers, unloading aircraft carrying wounded men evacuated from the Kokoda Trail. By December, the Japanese had been pushed back along the trail. The tanks of the 2nd 6th Armoured Regiment were transported at night by barge to Oro Bay, New Guinea. There they supported the successful American attack on Cape Ndiadare on the 18th of December, and then took part in the bitter fighting at Buna and Sanananda. In April 1943, Sergeant Emanuel and the 2nd 6th Armoured Regiment joined the 4th Armoured Brigade at Caboolture, Queensland. The 2nd 6th remained in Australia for the rest of the war, but Sergeant Emanuel was recruited for a new job. He joined the Far Eastern Liaison Office as part of Special Operations Australia and the Allied Intelligence Bureau. These forces were involved in secret intelligence and reconnaissance work in the Southwest Pacific area, often behind enemy lines. Their task was to obtain information about the enemy, lead sabotage efforts, and aid local populations that were resisting Japanese occupation. Forces from Australia, the United States, and the Netherlands worked together in these efforts. Sergeant Emanuel's knowledge of several languages would have proved useful, as the Far Eastern Liaison Office was responsible for writing propaganda leaflets. These were dropped from aircraft over enemy territories to encourage Japanese soldiers to surrender and local inhabitants to resist occupation. Over 3 years, the Far Eastern Liaison Office produced more than 60 million leaflets in 14 languages or dialects. Teams from the Liaison Office also did propaganda work in the field. For example, during the Battle of Hongarai River in Bougainville, it became known that Japanese morale in the area was very low. In an attempt to encourage surrender, an FELO team was brought to the front line to broadcast messages that encouraged Japanese soldiers to surrender, but without success. Little is known of the specifics of Sergeant Emanuel's time with the unit. He was stationed in Darwin and then Brisbane, but it is unlikely that he was always behind a desk. In April 1945, Warrant Officer Emanuel sailed from Brisbane to Morotai Island. From there, he and other officers engaged in reconnaissance and propaganda work using the B-24 aircraft. On the 2nd of July, 1945, Emanuel was aboard a B-24 that crashed while on an operational flight over Balikpapan, Borneo. Everyone on board was killed, including Frederick Emanuel. He was 26 years old. Frederick Emanuel is buried in Labuan War Cemetery, Malaysia. For years after his death, his wife and parents published tributes in their local newspaper. His parents also praised the gallant Australian aircrew who perished with their son. Frederick's name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my left, among almost 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Warrant Officer Class 2, Frederick Balfe Emanuel, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
If able. If able, please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Come on, buddy! Who's it? Oh!
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony.